they've been watching us all this time. Well, guess what? We're about to leap into their world. I think, as I suggested in my book, we've probably been in it all along, only asleep. Now we're about to wake up. Future space travel with all of this. Okay? So, disclosure on this topic is impossible on the one hand, because there's no motivation for the power elite to disclose this, but it's also inevitable. There's our paradox. Okay? They have no motivation, but it doesn't matter. We're never going to be ready for this, but it doesn't matter. Who's ready for their first child ever? No one. And you have it anyway. All right? That's going to be our world. Okay? It's going too fast. We're living through an absolutely, utterly revolutionary change. We forget because today looks kind of like yesterday, and yesterday looks kind of like last week. But when you look at the longer trend, it's massive change, of course, as we all realize. Unlike anything we've ever experienced in our civilization. Even bigger, probably, than the invention of fire. At some point, and I'm just wrapping up here now, if we have this reinvention of our civilization, we have some kind of event that forces this acknowledgement of the truth of what is going on, we may, in fact, get to a point where we have to deal with them, whoever them happen to be. Let's think about that for a moment. How well prepared are we as individuals and as a society? How well has our political and economic and educational institution prepared us? How well is our television programming, with the 30% of its commercials, prepared our intellects for what is undoubtedly a more elevated level of cognition? Maybe not all that well. What do we expect from these other beings? They're going to help us out, bail us out? Well, we're kind of screwing things up. We all know that. Are they going to help us and make us better? I don't think we should count on that. I don't think that our society as it is right now is getting us to a point where we're going to be dealing with them in any kind of mature way. But I do believe that there will be a great shock. Great shock forces great change. And a lot of people won't handle it, but a lot will. And I think as generations go by, we'll be handling it much better. We're going to have to. It'll only be the shock of something new, I believe, that forces us to get with the program, to straighten up and fly right, and then begin the process of actually acting like a mature species. Ultimately, we're going to have to live with ourselves. Why did I put that in? Well, I suppose because if we expect these other beings to help us out, well, that's all nice. But ultimately, it comes down to we living in our own mental world, and that's going to be what the determining factor in how we deal with them. This is my new book, the second volume of what is going to be a historical trilogy dealing with the modern UFO phenomenon. Those are the various chapters. Very briefly, and I'm going to close, it's essentially three major themes that I wove together, as with the first volume. It's a history, in one sense, of the phenomenon and the encounters themselves. So if you have an interest in thinking, what does Dolan have to say about the fire and the light case of 1970, the fire in the sky case of 1975, or the Gulf breeze sightings, or any other bit of minutia, you could go to the book and look it up and hopefully get everything you need. Another theme would be the politics, the cover-up, that is, the attitude of military and intelligence agencies around the world toward this, to the extent we can learn them. Who's in charge? Is it the president? Is it some other guy, some other group? I do certainly try to explore these issues. And by the way, I don't think it's the president, and you can find out who I do think it is. And then maybe the third theme is possibly the most interesting, at least it is to me. And that's the history of our interaction with this phenomenon. You could call it the history of UFO research, or ufology, as we call it. But really what it is the history of our consciousness in confronting this awesome mystery. For many, many eons, I think, they've been looking at us. And it really is in this period of time, the 70s and the 80s, when UFO researchers truly grappled with the issue of what are these other beings? Are they from another planet? Are they from another time? Are they from another dimension of reality? All of these issues came out. And there was a genuine attempt among the more responsible groups to do this scientifically, without the money, of course, that good science needs. But nonetheless, I think it's an important point in the history of our own consciousness as a species, and that is a story that I really did try to tell. You can learn more about this. You can go to my website. I've got a variety of articles and some YouTube clips and whatnot at my site called keyholepublishing.com. And that's it. I thank you so very much for your time today. I believe that we have a short amount of time for some questions and answers, and I would certainly be happy to answer any of those. If any of you have any.
You mentioned in your talk that there are other agents that are looking at UFO technology besides the government and the military. Who are they?
Other agents?
Yeah.
Well, certainly what we have is evidence, strong evidence, that many militaries around the world are encountering this phenomenon. One thing I try to point out in my current book is that this is absolutely global in its scope. You have militaries throughout Europe, South America, Asia, Africa that have encountered this. We have reports and documents from them. Within the U.S., we have a variety of agencies. You've got all the military groups. Okay, you've got Army intelligence, Air Force intelligence figures very heavily. Naval intelligence figures possibly most heavily of all. We have documents from the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is a kind of intelligence coordinating group. We've got a bunch of pretty good DIA documents about this. Then there's the CIA. There's an enormous connection that CIA has had with this topic in terms of its interest in studying it. And then we have, I didn't really get into it too much here, but the black world, the clandestine world. We call it the black budget because it's so black, you can't see it. It's not supposed to exist, but there it is. That is the world of what we call special access programs. This is something that I have tried to explore in my new book. In other words, what I'm suggesting to you is that there's a large number of off-the-grid organizations that I think really are not officially in existence. Consider that for the first decade of its existence, the NSA, the National Security Agency, was not known by the public or even by Congress. For the first 30 years of its existence, the NRO was not known. It was a felony in Congress to mention it by name up until the early 1990s, and yet it existed for over 30 years. So these, in other words, in our country, we have a long history of classified, not just classified programs, but entire classified bureaucracies. All right? And I absolutely believe that there is under multiple layers of cover, that is from Navy through NSA, probably, or NRO, to what we might call majestic, many of us have called, is a UFO-related black program. So, short answer to a very complex issue. Any other questions? Sir, I see yours over there. Let me get this gentleman first. Yes.
If these spaceships exist and they're manned or controlled by aliens, why haven't they been more open? Why is it all this kind of secret stuff? They could be much more public. They could communicate. They could orbit like a satellite, like we do. They could be here taking Earth samples.
That's a fair question. Yeah. I've asked myself this many, many, many times. All I can do is speculate here, okay? Because I can't get into their big heads any more than you can or anyone else here. But I can imagine that if I were studying, let's say, African lowland gorillas, I might not walk up to the lead